Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving back into some entitled people stories. Today we've got 3 incredible tales of people who thought they were untouchable until reality caught up. She thought her seniority would carry her forever. It did, until I answered the phone and explained I'd never actually seen her code. Years ago, I worked on a programming team at a mid-sized software company in the Midwest. We weren't building anything glamorous, mostly internal tools and business applications, but the work was steady, the team was solid, and for a while it was a good place to be. We had one senior team member I'll call Diane. Diane had been with the company longer than most of us, years before I joined. She'd been part of a small group that developed an internal suite of software tools. Those tools became mandatory across the company. Not because they were good, no one would have described them that way, but because management had already invested too much time and ego into them to admit they were clunky compared to the third-party alternatives everyone secretly preferred. That project became Diane's legend. She wrote it all the way to a senior title and a private office. On paper, she was one of the most experienced developers in the division. In practice, she did almost nothing. Her office door was usually half closed. If you knocked, you'd find her leaning back with her feet on the desk, paperback novel in hand. Romance, thrillers, historical dramas. She rotated genres, I'll give her that. The only consistent output I saw from her was turning pages. Meanwhile, the rest of us were juggling client requests, patching bugs, handling new feature rollouts, and putting out the daily fires that come with software development. If we needed input from Diane, it was usually a vague answer delivered with the tone of someone inconvenienced by being asked to justify her existence. Diane, can you review this module? It ties into the tool suite you built. She'd sigh, just make sure you follow the framework, it's all in the documentation. The documentation, of course, hadn't been updated in years. When deadlines loomed, she didn't stay late. When deployments went sideways, she wasn't on the calls. She'd already earned her stripes as far as she was concerned. The rest of us were just supposed to be grateful to work in the glow of her past accomplishment. Eventually, the company started to wobble. Sales dipped, projects dried up, management panicked, layoffs came in waves. First contractors, then junior staff, then entire departments. Our division was gutted in one particularly brutal round. Diane's seniority didn't save her. Titles don't do much when the revenue disappears. I landed on my feet at another company a few months later. Different culture, better leadership, actual accountability. Diane faded into the background of "remember that place" stories. Then years later, my desk phone rang. "This is OP," I answered. "Good afternoon, Mr. OP," the voice said. "My name is Tom Harris. I'm with HR at Westbridge Technologies. One of your former colleagues, Diane Miller, has applied for a senior programming role with us. She listed you as a reference." I nearly laughed, but kept it professional. "She did, huh? What would you like to know?" "How long did you work together?" "About 5 years, same department." "Great," he said, the optimism audible in his voice. "And how would you describe her performance during that time?" I paused just long enough to deliberate. Not dramatic. "Well, I can't really comment on her work." This is the perfect opening move. It's not an attack, it's a statement of factual incapacity. You're not refusing to answer, you're admitting you lack the data. The pause tells the interviewer this isn't a casual answer, and the wording "can't really comment" carries the heavy implication that there's nothing to comment on. It's the verbal equivalent of an empty comment log. A beat of silence. "I'm sorry?" "I never actually saw any." Another deep pause, longer this time. "You were in the same department for 5 years and never saw her work?" "That's correct." He cleared his throat. "Does that mean what I think it means?" "Yes," I said calmly, "it does." There was no rant, no insults, no embellishment, just the truth. "I appreciate your honesty," he said finally. "Happy to help." We ended the call. I don't know what Diane told them in her interview. I imagine she leaned heavily on the legendary internal tool suite. Maybe she talked about leadership and architecture and strategic oversight. Maybe she framed her time in that office as high-level thinking instead of paperback marathons. But here's the thing about references. They don't require you to be cruel. They just require you to be accurate. In 5 years, I'd seen code from interns, from contractors, from brand new hires fresh out of school. I'd reviewed pull requests at midnight and collaborated on rewrites over pizza and stale coffee. From Diane, I saw book covers. If you're going to coast on an old project for a decade, at least make sure the people who shared the hallway with you aren't still answering their phones. And our second story. My CEO thought my chair was too nice for my position. A few years ago, my wife and I were in that weird in-between stage of adulthood where everything is technically progressing, but nothing is actually convenient. We finally bought a house after renting for years, but of course there was a delay in construction. The closing date got pushed back, which meant we were suddenly homeless for a few weeks. My mother graciously offered her spare room, and we accepted with the kind of forced enthusiasm only grown adults moving back in with a parent can muster. Because space was tight at her place, I stashed a few non-essentials at work. One of those items was my office chair. Not just any chair either. I'd scored a second-hand Herman Miller Aeron a year earlier for a price that felt like highway robbery in my favor. It was glorious, ergonomic, breathable, adjustable in ways I didn't even fully understand. Compared to the standard issue office chairs at work, which were perfectly functional in the same way hospital waiting room furniture is perfectly functional, it was a throne. I worked at a mid-sized company, around 120 employees, open plan office, lots of glass, just enough hierarchy to remind you it existed. I worked 8 to 4 to avoid traffic, which meant I was almost always the first person in. The first morning I rolled my Aeron into the office, it felt mildly indulgent. By day 3, I'd completely forgotten it was even different. That's when I noticed something odd. Every morning my chair would be in the conference room. No note, no explanation, just gone from my desk and parked at the head of the big table like it had business to conduct. I'd shrug, wheel it back to my desk, and get on with my day. Then it started appearing somewhere else. After a few more mornings of this quiet relocation, I noticed it was ending up near the CEO's desk. Not in his glass office, he wasn't that bold, but at the open desk area he used when he wanted to be accessible. He usually rolled in around noon, stayed late, and preferred meetings after most staff had gone home. So there I was, every morning retrieving my chair from wherever it had been spirited away to. I never said anything, I just reclaimed it and got to work. The CEO started shooting me looks. Not conversation, not confrontation, just tight little glances that lingered a bit too long. The kind that say, I'm annoyed, but also I'm not going to articulate why. After about a week of this silent tug-of-war, his assistant approached me. She was genuinely lovely and perpetually exhausted in the way only assistants to insecure executives can be. She leaned on my desk and lowered her voice. Hey, can I talk to you for a second? Sure, I said, already knowing this was about the chair. She glanced around like we were discussing classified information. So he's noticed your chair. I figured. He doesn't think it's appropriate. Appropriate, I repeated. She winced. He's worried people might think that's his desk because the chair is nicer. I blinked. People might think I'm the CEO because of a chair? She gave a helpless shrug. It's stressing him out. I keep having to move it back for him before meetings. He feels like it undermines him. This is the moment the absurdity crystallizes. He wasn't concerned about the chair's functionality or even his own comfort. He was concerned about perception. Specifically, the perception that a regular employee might be mistaken for him because of a superior piece of office furniture. It's the purest, most naked form of status anxiety, stripped of all pretense. He didn't want the chair. He wanted no one else to have a chair that could be confused with his own. There are moments in life when you realize you're living inside a sitcom. This was one of them. I nodded solemnly. I completely understand. Her shoulders relaxed a little. You do? Absolutely, I said. It wouldn't be right. She looked relieved. I think she expected an argument. Instead, I wheeled the chair out at lunch. The next day, I sat at my desk in one of the standard gray office chairs. No mesh, no lumbar dial, just corporate mediocrity. Around mid-morning, she appeared again. Hey, where's the chair? Oh, I said, keeping my face as neutral as possible. I took it to my car. Her expression froze. I didn't want to cause any confusion, I continued. Wouldn't want people thinking I run the company. She stared at me like I just told her I'd adopted a raccoon. You took it to your car? Yep, since it's not appropriate to have it here. She opened her mouth, closed it, then gave a tight nod and walked briskly away. Here's the thing about office parking. Because I come in early, I always got one of the spots right near the building entrance, and because we were in a suburban office park, everyone walked past the same row of cars on the way in. My trunk was large. My air-on was visible. For the next few weeks, anyone entering the building could clearly see a very nice office chair sitting in the back of my car. Coworkers started asking, "Why is your chair in your trunk?" "Oh," I'd say casually, "it's not appropriate for me to have a nicer chair than the CEO." There's something magical about stating the unvarnished truth with a completely straight face. It spreads faster than gossip because it doesn't sound like gossip. It sounds like fact. Within days, the entire floor knew. No one from leadership ever said a word to me about it. Not the CEO, not HR, not management. I suspect he quickly realized that reclaiming the chair would require actually asking for it, which would require explaining why he needed it, which would require admitting he felt threatened by a piece of ergonomic furniture. So the chair stayed in my trunk. Every morning I'd park, step out, and see people glance at it. Some smirked, some shook their heads, a few gave me a subtle thumbs up. Eventually our house was finished and I moved out of my mom's place. The chair came home with me and resumed its rightful place in my office. The CEO never mentioned it again. He also never tried to move another chair from my desk. To this day, I'm convinced they assumed I'd just quietly surrender and let him have it. Instead, I gave up the chair and kept the story. And our last story. My HOA tried to lien my house over $4,000 in fake violations. I'm posting this now only because I no longer live in that house or that neighborhood, and enough time has passed that I can finally laugh about it. At the time, though, this whole thing nearly drove me feral. I lived in what was marketed as a charming master-planned community in Florida, which is code for cookie-cutter houses, identical lawns, and an HOA that thought it was a miniature government with delusions of grandeur. This place went up fast. I mean, absurdly fast. One weekend, it was a ghost town with paved roads and empty lots, and a month later, it was packed. 8 or 10 moving trucks every weekend. Contractors everywhere. People still figuring out which light switch did what. Everyone was new, everyone was busy, and nobody really knew how things worked yet, including apparently the HOA. In Florida, most HOAs are required to use certified mail to notify homeowners of violations. That's not optional, it's a legal requirement. My HOA decided to be extra about it. Not only were violations handled via certified mail, but apparently all communication with the board had to be done that way too. You got a violation? Certified mail to respond. Want a hearing? Certified mail. Need documents? Certified mail. This might already sound stupid, but here's the fun part. When I moved in, they provided the CC&Rs. Those outlined what you could and couldn't do. Trash cans, paint colors, lawn height, all the usual nonsense. What they did not provide were the bylaws, which explain how violations are issued, how homeowners can contest them, and how the board is supposed to operate. Keep that in mind. The first couple months were fine. I was dealing with typical new construction issues, including a grading problem between my house and the neighbors that caused standing water every time it rained. I was already arguing with the developer about that, so my tolerance for nonsense was pretty low. Then, around month 3, I came home from work and found a massive packet taped to my front door. Not mailed, not certified, just taped there like a flyer for a missing cat. The title on the first page made my stomach drop. Notice of intent to lien. According to this packet, I was delinquent on multiple violations. Not just one or two, a whole list. Repeated violations, late fees, legal fees. The total came out to $4,032.12. I stood there on my porch reading it in disbelief. The violations included not keeping garbage cans out of sight, even though they were on the side of my house just like half the neighborhood, standing water between the homes, which was a documented grading issue I was already fighting with the developer, parking a vehicle in my driveway but slightly over the sidewalk line, bushes not trimmed appropriately with no explanation of what that meant, and my personal favorite, an unapproved modification to the doorway, which turned out to be my Ring doorbell camera. There were more, but those were the highlights. I went inside, sat down, and immediately emailed the HOA asking for clarification. No response. I emailed again the next day. Still nothing. By day 3, I was significantly less polite. On day 4, I flat out threatened legal action if they didn't respond. That finally got me an email back. It was short, smug, and infuriating. It said all communications regarding violations will only be addressed via communication methods approved in the bylaws. So I replied and asked for a copy of the bylaws. Their response: all requests for the bylaws must be submitted via approved communication methods as per the bylaws. At that point, I very seriously considered committing a felony. Instead, I took a breath. The notice gave me 45 days before any lien could be filed. It had only been a few days. I had time. Here's a fun thing about Florida HOAs. When a neighborhood is first built, the developer drafts everything. The CC&Rs, the bylaws, all of it. The HOA board just inherits them. My developer was already on my personal blacklist for other reasons, so when I emailed my contact there asking for a copy of the bylaws, I fully expected a fight. Instead, I had a PDF in my inbox within minutes. And that's when everything clicked. The bylaws were crystal clear. All communication had to be via certified mail. Every single violation had to be issued individually via certified mail. Every notice of failure to cure, certified mail. Every late fee, certified mail. Everything, no exceptions. I counted, I had 8 unique violations plus repeats over 9 weeks. At minimum, they should have sent me 22 certified letters. I'd received exactly 0. That's when the petty part of my soul clocked in for overtime. That sentence is the thesis statement of the entire saga. The petty part of your soul didn't just clock in, it became a full-time, overtime, all-hands-on-deck operation. This is the moment you stopped being a victim of their bureaucratic ambush and became an expert in their own rules, ready to weaponize their own system against them. I decided on a 2-pronged approach. First, I wanted to make sure I wasn't the only one getting screwed. Second, I wanted to fight every single violation separately, exactly the way the bylaws required. If they wanted to play rules lawyer, I could play that game too. I took 2 days off work and got busy. The first thing I did was draft a 1-page letter. No names, no accusations, just an explanation that homeowners should request a copy of the bylaws via certified mail, along with the relevant section quoted directly. I included the HOA's mailing address and the exact language homeowners should use. I also explained how violations were supposed to be handled and what to do if someone had received a notice of intent to lien. I printed 150 copies, that was roughly the number of houses in the neighborhood. I recruited a few neighbors I trusted, and we spent an afternoon quietly placing them on doors. Then came step 2. I drafted a template to contest violations. Each letter referenced one specific violation. I explained why it was being contested, cited the CC&Rs where applicable, and then added a formal request for records. Specifically, proof that the violation had been delivered via certified mail as required by the bylaws. I customized each letter, 22 violations, plus 1 contesting the lien itself. 23 certified letters went out on a Thursday afternoon. Florida law requires HOAs to respond to records requests within 10 business days. Every one of my letters included a records request. About a week and a half later, I got a furious email. It said all violations were valid and that I had 25 more days to comply or they'd proceed with the lien. I replied with one sentence. All communications regarding violations must be done in approved communication methods as per Article 9 of the bylaws. They never sent the certified responses, so I sent 23 follow-up letters, also certified, documenting their failure to comply and notifying them of violations of Florida HOA law. Around that time, the neighborhood rumor mill kicked in. According to a guy married to one of the board members, nearly 100 homeowners had requested copies of the bylaws via certified mail. On top of that, people with active liens were contesting them the same way I had. It turns out the board hadn't sent a single certified violation. Not one. In many cases, they hadn't notified homeowners at all and were jumping straight to lien threats, assuming people would panic and pay. Why? Because there was an undeveloped lot at the front of the neighborhood facing a major road. The developer wanted to sell it to a commercial buyer. Coincidentally, that lot sat right in front of the homes of the earliest residents. Also coincidentally, most of the HOA board lived right there. They were trying to rack up violation fees to buy the lot through the HOA and keep a gas station from popping up in front of their houses. The lien on my home never happened. Within 2 weeks, the developer suddenly fixed every issue I'd been fighting them on for months. The grading was redone, French drains installed, sod replaced, everything. I moved out a few months later when an offer came in that made me ignore short-term capital gains and leave without looking back. All told, I sent 46 certified letters. I spent about $350 in 2 days of PTO. Still the best money I've ever spent. Pick your fighter, the quiet killer, the silent protester, or the paperwork warlord. Each of these stories features someone who refused to meet entitlement on its own terms. Story 1's weapon was omission, not lying, simply stating the absence of evidence. No rant, no list of grievances, just a 5-year gap where a career should have been. Devastatingly clean. Story 2's weapon was visibility. By moving the chair to his trunk instead of hiding it, OP turned a petty power struggle into a daily public exhibit. The CEO couldn't reclaim the chair without admitting weakness, so he just had to watch everyone see it. Every single morning. But Story 3 wins. 46 certified letters. Not a shouting match, not a dramatic confrontation, just an avalanche of paper perfectly formatted, legally bulletproof. OP didn't just fight his own $4,000 lien, he handed the entire neighborhood a blueprint and watched the HOA's illegal scheme collapse under the weight of its own rules. That's not pettiness, that's architecture. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.